Hello and welcome into Big Ten Today, brought to you by Walmart. Happy to have you here alongside the former Illini guard Trent Meacham. I'm Kylan Mills. The best time of year has arrived, folks. Of course, we're talking about postseason basketball. The Big Ten men's basketball tournament gets underway today. I can't believe it's here. If it's anything like the regular season, we're in for a treat.
I think the games today, all the way through Sunday, this is the most open I think this tournament maybe has ever been. We have the most teams. There's the most depth, top to bottom. I think these matchups are going to be great, so I'm really looking forward to this getting started.
One person who loves March more than anyone else who we have to bring in now is the Andy Katz, joining us live from Indianapolis, where he will be reporting all weekend. Andy, hello. My first question is, do you have an idea of an exact number of how many basketball games you're going to be working in the next couple weeks?
Actually, I could give you that figure. I guess there's, 12 or 13 here. I'm going to be off. And then certainly we have 6 next week, and then another 3, and then another 2. So you can add all that up. I will say this, Trent and Colin, this is the first time, of course, of this new format. We just saw it with the women, where 15 of the 18 qualify. We've got 3 of the 4 expansion or West Coast schools that are here. The only one that didn't was Washington. And we had great drama down to the last day of the regular season as Iowa knocked off Nebraska to earn that last spot, and Nebraska ends up losing 5 in a row, not even qualifying here. And obviously we'll be out of the NCAA tournament. We'll see if they're going to play in some form of postseason. But it just added to the fact that we've got some drama to end the season, and I think we're going to have plenty of it here in Indianapolis.
We look forward to watching that drama unfold in the next couple of days, and we look forward to seeing a lot of Andy Katz in the next couple of days. This tournament, though, wide open, and that is today's big story. 15 teams competing in Indianapolis for the first time in conference history, as Andy just pointed out, as a part of the recent expansion. Seeds 1 through 4 earned double byes. Seeds 5 through 9 got a single bye. Everyone else gets underway today at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Hope is alive that any of these teams can win a title, and this year's tournament seems especially up for grabs. Andy, I want to go right back to you to expand more upon just how open this year's tournament is. We have seen all season long the parity in the Big Ten, where any team, it seems, can beat any team on any given day. What do you make of the competition level that we've seen?
Well, first of all, we have seen this in another league. Last year, NC State won 5 games in 5 days to get that AQ. They weren't going to go to the NCAA tournament. So here on Wednesday, any of the teams that are playing in these 3 games legitimately have a shot. And the beauty of what we've seen this season in the men's basketball regular season is there are no bad teams. I mean, Washington finished last, but they were able to beat Maryland, which is one of the best teams, not just in the Big Ten, but in the country. And so right off the bat, where you've got Northwestern and Minnesota, I mean, those 2 schools have already beaten some of the best teams in this league, and they're more than capable of going on a run beginning here Wednesday afternoon. So I do think that, it's going to play out. The double bye certainly helps teams like Michigan State, Maryland, UCLA. To some degree, I don't know how much it really helps Michigan, because they've been really struggling, losing 3 in a row. But UCLA came off a great home win over USC. So they're playing really well. Maryland finished really strong, and obviously Michigan State did as well by beating Michigan and winning the league outright. So to me, the favorites are Michigan State, Maryland, and I think UCLA. If there's one team that's playing on Thursday that I think would potentially go on a run to win this whole thing, could be Purdue, because they're going to have a great show of support, and they've played in this building before, and they certainly have the goods to potentially win this whole thing.
What about you, Trent? What do you make of the level of competition, how open this is, and any teams you particularly like?
I think the top 8 teams could win it. I really do. All the top 8 seeds, they all have the ability to win it, the talent to win it. You look at Purdue and Indiana, home court advantage potentially there. And what's great, though, too, is the teams that are at the bottom, they've been playing really well. And the final thing I'll add is that when you're a player, if you get to play before, that day before, you have some success, you see the ball go through the hoop, you have some momentum coming up against a team that hasn't been on that floor in that environment, and that sets the stage for some upsets frequently.
One team that I don't expect to be upset. Oh, Andy, of course. You can jump in whenever you like.
I just want to say that, and I'm curious what Trent thinks of this, is the late game, USC-Rutgers. The talent on the floor, I mean, NBA scouts are going to love the talent on the floor in that game. And certainly with the ability of Desmond Claude and Wesley Yates, they can put up monster numbers. They didn't play well against UCLA. We know that. But new season here. And then, of course, Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey projected to be 2 of the top 5 picks in the NBA draft. And that game is getting kind of lost in all this discussion. But I think that could be maybe one of the most entertaining games we see all week. And certainly if you want to see some of that potential NBA talent, you better watch Wednesday night, because we don't know how long all those players are going to be, not just in this tournament, but playing for their respective schools. So that is one game I'm really looking forward to checking out later tonight. And it's sort of just under the radar amid all of our discussion.
Every game today, I think, they're great matchups, but there's no doubt the stage like this is the big stage, the Big Ten. You just feel like stars are ready to thrive. So I'm looking forward to whoever wins that game. Look, they can go to the next game against Purdue and feel like, hey, we got maybe the best player on the court potentially, or 2 of the best players on the court. So that could set them up for a little run here. It'll be really fun to watch.
One team that embraces the big moment is Michigan State under a legendary coach that is Tom Izzo. So let's talk more about the teams that are at the top of the standings and maybe going in viewed more as favorites, even though great points. Of course, every single team is competitive as we approach the postseason. Andy, I want to know why you feel so strongly that the Spartans could possibly get it done here in the Big Ten tournament.
Well, I saw them at the beginning of the season when they lost in Atlanta to Kansas, and then I was with them in Maui. And I go back to that third game in Maui, and sometimes we forget about those sort of the third games if it's not for a championship in these MTEs, those tournaments. And when they beat North Carolina and had to do so late in that game, that was sort of a turning point. They had just lost to Memphis the day before. And after that win over North Carolina, they ripped off, a bunch in a row. I don't know if it was 12 in a row. They started off really strong in the league. I know they had a softer schedule, for lack of a better word. And then they hit their skid because you play the tougher teams. And then the way they finished with, the buzzer beater at Maryland, the victory over Illinois, the fact that they ended up beating Michigan, sweeping Michigan, just the way they played down the stretch, I think was a strong indication that this team is different than the ones we've seen recently from Tom Izzo. Jaden Akins, who's been a little up and down in his last campaign, played strong down the stretch. Jace Richardson has not just been one of the best players in this league, but one of the best freshmen, and he has started to ascend. And more than anything, their center position, which looked like an Achilles heel at the beginning of the season, has been a strength because of the depth. They can keep running bodies. I mean, they've got essentially at least 15 fouls to play with. You could argue maybe 20 fouls to play with the different bigs that they can rotate out there.
What do you make of Michigan State?
Maybe Tom Izzo's best coaching job, well-deserved coach of the year. 10 guys are playing. They're all bought in. They're all playing to their strengths. They're relentless, too. That's what makes them so tough. And then Jace Richardson, you can't say enough. Hadn't played 30 minutes in one game all year, but the last 9 games, over 30 minutes a game, over 17 points a game. They got a superstar. I know he's a freshman, but I think he's made for March. And, man, that 10 unit, though, their nonstop attack, so tough. You got to feel good about their chances. 9
Spartans average 14-plus minutes. 9 Spartans also average 5-plus points per game. Head coach Tom Izzo has said the selflessness of his team, being willing to give up a couple of minutes or maybe a couple of points every single game, is what has made the difference down the stretch. Everyone is bought in on that Michigan State squad. Another team that seems to be bought in and also very hot here as we approach the postseason is Maryland, winning 7 of their last 8 games. All of their starters average 12-plus points per game, and they have one of the most dynamic front court duos, not just in the conference, but I believe in the country. What do you like, Andy, about this Terp squad?
Well, I think it's one of the best starting fives in the country, regardless of conference affiliation. They've got maybe one of the top 2 to 3 freshmen in Derek Queen. Julian Reese has played his role as a mentor exceptionally well. He's a really good defender. But they did we talked about this all season, the way they got 3 guards out of the portal, and Sultan Miguel, and Rodney Rice and Jacoby Gillespie, all 3 bought in immediately. They can do a little bit of different things for Kevin Willard. And yeah, do they have a great bench? No. But Jordan Geronimo, certainly in that Michigan game we did last Wednesday, he came in and really contributed when there was some foul trouble early to Julian Reese. And the thing that you have to remember, more so next week than this week, is when you get in the NCAA tournament, as long as there's not foul trouble, which certainly could happen and take someone off the court, but in terms of conditioning, it's really not a factor because the timeouts are so much longer in the NCAA tournament that you can rest guys and get them that second wind that you're probably only going to play. We talk about Michigan State playing 10. a team's maybe only going to play normally 7 because of those breaks that you get in the NCAA tournament. And you're also playing every other day, whereas this week, if you advance, it's every day. So I think Maryland is definitely built for the NCAA tournament to have great success.
I agree with Andy, and here's the deal. All 5 of those starters, they all play 28 or more minutes. That's a lot of minutes, but what makes it work is there's not one guy that has too much responsibility. And they've done such a great job this season of knowing who's hot, who's got the mismatch, when Derek Queen has got to go in and get him the ball, when Jacoby Gillespie can just run the show, not just distributing, but scoring for himself. So that's what I love about them. Yes, they're playing heavy minutes, but they distribute the wealth so well. One game it's one guy, the next game it's the next, but they never let up, and I think that bodes well for them here in both tournaments.
Another team that gets a double bye in the Big Ten tournament, maybe could have good chances to go deep, is the UCLA Bruins. They've won 3 of their last 4 games. They have the Big Ten's best scoring defense. They force a ton of turnovers. Andy, what do you think the chances are for UCLA to make a run?
So I know it sounds weird to say like my sleeper pick to win it as a 4 seed, but I don't think they're being discussed much. And the way they played against USC on Saturday night, that's UCLA at its best. I will not be shocked if we have a UCLA sweep in the men's and women's tournaments in this same building, if they can mimic what they did on Saturday night against USC. They defend as well, if not better, than any other team in this league. They're certainly one of the top 15 teams defensively. But the key is Tyler Bilodeau, if he can continue to score the way he did, whether it's Daly and Riley getting contributions in a variety of ways, and the play of Sebastian Mack, Dylan Andrews, and Sky Clark. If those 3 players can play within themselves, not commit turnovers, and they've had those games where they have, there's no question that this team is ascending at the right time. And right now on your screen, you see the X factor right there. Daimara, when he started to play better, UCLA really changed the narrative of their season. There's no one like him in this league. There may not be anyone like him in the country. Look at his size. You just cannot play him straight up because he can just score over you. And he's a rim protector, so he doesn't log a ton of minutes, but when he's on the floor, he's a difference maker.
Daimara, no question. It's not when he started to play better. It's when he started to play.
Period.
I love Mick Cronin. He's done a great job, but play the big fella. The last 2 games, he had 14 in 14 minutes versus USC. He had 11 and 10 in 16 minutes against Northwestern. He is such a factor at 7'3", great touch around the rim, can facilitate as well. So he's a guy that makes a difference on both ends of the floor. And the other guy that isn't talked about enough is Eric Daly. 12 and 4 on the season, had 25 points against USC. Kind of a Swiss Army knife, physical, rugged, can go outside, can go inside. His efficiency has been high all season. So he's a guy that's an all-big caliber player that hasn't been talked much, and I think he's poised for a big March.
Something we haven't touched on with UCLA as well is the fact that they're traveling across 3 time zones, nearly cross-country to Indianapolis. It's something that head coach Mick Cronin has talked a lot about here as we approach the postseason, is just how much the travel could affect this Bruins squad. How much did that wear and tear from the course of the regular season, playing in their first Big Ten season, show in the postseason in March? How fresh are they? Some of those questions may be answered this weekend. We got to step aside here for a quick break. Today's Big Stat is presented by Walmart. Postseason play is a lot about getting healthy and peaking at the right time. Michigan State and Oregon bring 7-game win streaks into the Big Ten tournament. Illinois, another team to keep an eye on as they've rattled off 3 straight wins, including an upset of 18th-ranked Purdue. They are now in the AP Top 25. The Illini are coming in at 24 this week. To talk about maybe some more sleeper picks, depending on how you look at it, we welcome back in Andy Katz and Trent Meacham. Let's start with the Oregon Ducks, one of the hottest teams in the conference right now. They have won 7 in a row. During that time, big man Nate Biddle has averaged nearly 20 points per game. The defense has played much better. What are going to be the keys for the Ducks here as they approach the postseason, Andy?
Well, we love to talk about Tom Izzo being the month of March. Dana Altman, certainly has to be in that conversation as well because his teams continue to get better throughout the course of his tenure at Oregon, even before that when he was at Creighton. So look, Nate Biddle, as long as he stays on the court, they don't have a lot of depth there. Obviously, Supreme Cook can play a little bit in there too, but it's all about Biddle. If he can stay on the court, his passing ability, his ability to score inside, his leadership is monumental. Jackson Shellstad, when he can make shots, it's a different team. He's been inconsistent this season. But when he does, it's impressive, whether it's Bartholomew or Evans, who's obviously a big man who can do a little bit of everything. But I think one of the key factors for Oregon will be TJ Bamba. His defense, especially on the ball, could be a difference for them. They're facing a very familiar foe that they just knocked off at home in Indiana. If they get that one, which will be a really true road game for them in this building, it's clearly a difference for Oregon. If they can get that one, I think they'll have the momentum going forward.
I think the biggest thing for Oregon is they thought Shelstad was their guy early on, and he kind of struggled a little bit. But now they know Nate Biddles is their go-to guy. Despite him being the center, he's the hub offensively. You mentioned the 20 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 3.5 blocks the last 7 games. So he's the hub offensively. They can play through him. But defensively, he is such an anchor and a rim protector. And now that allows Jackson Shelstad to settle in and pick his spots. And we've seen him show up big in key moments. I expect that to continue in March. And I'd agree with Andy. He mentioned TJ Bamba. I'd also throw in Kwame Evans Jr. Defensively brings a lot to the table for them.
Oregon, a number 8 seed, they will face Indiana, and we'll talk more about predictions coming up later on in this show. However, another team that could make some noise, 7th-seeded Illinois. They've been playing really well recently, won 3 straight. And we also got some big news recently. The team announced that forward Merez Johnson Jr. has been cleared to play. Andy, I know you always have the insight. I don't know if you have any update on that, but anything else you want to add on the Illini?
I don't. I mean, the good news, for that is, for him, his game is dunking, rim protecting, with a hand or wrist injury. If he can catch the ball cleanly, that's all. I mean, if it was a knee or an ankle or an Achilles or something like that, then his lift might be an issue, and that could really affect him. So I'll be really interested to see how much he plays, how effective he is. But I do think that with this kind of injury, he might be able to come back quicker in terms of, contributing. My thing with Illinois is I'm guarded. I'm sorry. I saw them at their worst. I was there at Madison Square Garden. I don't want to go back to last year because I saw that one too, the 30-0 run the UConn had. Different team. But this team, I saw them at their worst last month at Madison Square Garden, losing by 43 points to Duke. So I'm going to reserve judgment here. Yes, they're playing well. Great finish to that game against Purdue at home on Friday night. But I want to see it this week to believe it, because I have seen what happens when it unravels for the Illini.
I'm going to look at them at their best, all right, Andy? And this team has changed a lot. I look at them as they were this European team. I look at the pillars of their team, and Yakachonis at the 1 and Ivisic at the 5. And it seemed like those two guys were really who dictated things that they play through. But recently, I look at the 3 guard/wings. Kylan Boswell won those 3 wins, nearly 15, 5 and 5. Will Riley has taken off the last 6 weeks or so. In the last 10 of 11 games, he's been in double figures. Big-time scorers, not playing like a freshman. And finally, Trey White, over 17 points. He's hit 8 threes in the final 3 games. So those wings have stepped up, and it's given them a lot more balance. If they bring it defensively, they can beat anybody.
Illinois' Will Riley, just named Big Ten 6th Player of the Year. Andy, what do you got for us?
Well, I was just going to add that, he had sort of a natural freshman year where there was a lot of hype early. Remember, he had big-time scoring games, Trent, against some of the weaker non-conference teams. Then he kind of hit a bit of a wall, wasn't playing as much, and then kind of blossomed here in the last month and earned that 6th Man award. So I'll give you that. I think that certainly if he plays the way he's been playing the last couple of weeks, that's a game changer.
He'll give you that, okay?
Thanks,
Trent,
Andy.
He'll give you that, but I like that you're backing your alma mater, a former Illini, of course. All right, up next, we are taking you through the Big Ten tournament. The Big Ten men's basketball tournament bracket is set. Michigan State, the regular season champions, earned the number 1 overall seed. Maryland, number 2, another team that's very hot, winning 7 of their last 8 games. And for the last 5 years, the 1 or 2 seed has won the tournament, but there has been so much parity in the league this year, Trent. I don't necessarily think that is going to be the case. Don't sleep on seeds 3 through 8 has been the message throughout the show here from you. As we welcome you back now to break down the bracket game by game. Trent's going to tell us who's going to pull off the upsets, who's going to go all the way. So let's start with the Wednesday games. 13th ranked Northwestern taking on 12th ranked Minnesota. Who do you got?
These teams just played February 25th at Minnesota. Northwestern won by 12. Really played a great game. Nick Martinelli had 29 points. Dawson Garcia had 26. I think it's going to be the same story. Northwestern's going to win this. This game, though, will come down to the other guys. I think those two lefties battling are going to have great games, but it's who else steps up and makes shots will win this game, and I have Northwestern.
Which team has more depth? Andy, what do you think?
I agree with him, and I think a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Nick Martinelli getting snubbed from the first team. I think he'll come out firing. I am going to agree with you on that pick.
Yeah, I also thought that was surprising about Martinelli, given he's been one of the top 3 scorers in the conference all season long. Let's move along to 15th seeded Iowa taking on 10th seeded Ohio State. Who do you think takes that one?
Iowa's already won one single elimination game at Nebraska, but I got Ohio State. I just think their balance, their depth, the 3 guards there are so dangerous, and so I see Ohio State winning this one.
Iowa's defense also has been very suspect, right, Andy?
You know what, though? I love when you go with the hot hand. This happens all the time. A team that has played Game 7 type games, they get in. I think the momentum is actually for Iowa, and I like the Hawkeyes to pull what I don't know. I wouldn't really call it an upset. It would be seed-wise, but I'm going with Iowa.
Interesting. Andy, I'm surprised because every time you've been in here, we've been talking about Iowa's defense not showing up. They have to string together stops, and that's what it comes down to in the postseason. If I had to make a pick, I would go with Ohio State. All right, 14th-seeded USC taking on 11th-seeded Rutgers. Who do you think takes that one?
These teams just played. Rutgers won 95-85. Claude and Yates combined for 53. Bailey and Harper combined for 39. You think Yates might have a chip on her shoulder, was not on that all-freshman team, but I got Rutgers. I think this stage is set for Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper to have a great game. And look, if they get this win, they could be dangerous moving forward as well.
Andy, are you on the Rutgers bus? The people want to know.
Come on, Andy.
No. I think the complimentary players from SC get it done in a late possession game, late night here at Cambridge.
All right, so let's check in on where we're at on the bracket now. Now, those ladies out at Rutgers are going to be very disappointed, Andy. You're no longer on the Rutgers bus. Here's where we're at, though, in terms of who Trent's picks are. So let's go back to the board. 9th-seeded Indiana taking on 8th-seeded Oregon, 2 teams that got those first-round byes. Who do you think is the winner of that one?
Well, look, Oregon could win this whole thing. I really do believe that. I got Indiana. This is a 9 a.m. game on the West Coast for Oregon. Indiana's going to have the home crowd advantage. They're playing with so much pride and purpose right now. Got a number of Indiana kids. I think this could be set up for Indiana to get a win. They just played 2, which was a barn burner there. They just played at Oregon, and Oregon pulled away. But I see Indiana doing that here in Indianapolis.
Do you agree, Andy?
I don't. I mean, first of all, these are young people. They can play in the morning. They can play at the night. Oregon's already been here. I just passed, actually, the staff on the street. They were getting their coffee at Starbucks, walking around. So they're settled here. I agree with you. I think Oregon could win the whole thing. So you notice a trend here. I'm leaning West Coast, making their mark here in Indy, so I'm going Oregon.
I thought the trend was going against my
Disagreeing with you. That's what I was literally about to say. I thought Andy's just going to go against whatever Trent picks. But hey, we'll keep the theme going. All right, Northwestern taking on 5th-seeded Wisconsin after the Wildcats win that first-round matchup, according to Trent. Do the Badgers take it?
Wisconsin, another team I don't have winning it, but I have them winning, but I believe could win the whole thing. I do have them winning this game. I just think how they space the floor, it's going to bring Matt Nicholson out. I don't think Northwestern can guard them the full width of the court, and I see Wisconsin winning this one.
Andy, your alma mater, are you going to back them up?
Yes, I am, because I think they were so humbled by that disappointing loss to Penn State over the weekend. They've had time to let that marinate. I don't think they make that same mistake twice.
Well, there you go. You finally are agreeing with Trent. Thank you, Andy. Ohio State taking on 7th-seeded Illinois. Who takes that one?
You know, these teams played. It was a really tight game. Devin Royal had 29 points. Illinois pulled away at the end. I got Illinois once again. That was the game that Will Riley took off. He had 24 points, and he really has not looked back since that game. I know Andy talked about him earlier. He's an X factor, a difference maker. Simply, he's a bucket. You can't stop him, and I think Illinois is just deeper, more balanced, and wins this game.
Andy, you said you weren't sold on the Illini, but do they get upset here?
No, regardless of whether Trent's team gets in Ohio State or mine, Iowa, I think Illinois advances.
All right, Rutgers taking on 6th-seeded Purdue, at least Rutgers according to Trent, that is. How does that game finish?
I got Purdue winning this game. I know I talked about Bailey and Harper being dangerous, but Braden Smith has dominated these first two games. I don't think that's going to change. I see Purdue in front of their home fans winning this one.
All right, well, let's.
I agree once again, regardless of who they're playing. And by the way, that Purdue-Rutgers second half might have been the low point for Rutgers this season. That was pretty embarrassing. They got run out of Mackey Arena. So if it's Rutgers, I think the same thing happens, certainly in sort of a semi-road venue. And if it's USC, I don't think they can string together 2 wins in a row.
All right, so you're in agreement. The Boilers move on to the quarterfinals round. So let's check out the bracket once again based on Trent's picks so far. Northwestern, Ohio State, Rutgers, first-round winners, and now we've got Indiana, Wisconsin, Illinois, Purdue moving on into the quarterfinal round to play those top 4 seeds. Let's begin at the top. Indiana taking on the #1 overall seed, Michigan State. Could the Hoosiers possibly pull off maybe the biggest upset of the tournament?
Well, they already beat them in East Lansing.
They did.
They threw a zone at them, really put Michigan State out of the rhythm. If they do that again, I don't think it's going to throw Michigan State off. They're just playing with too much momentum now, too many guys. They're shooting the ball better. I see Michigan State winning this game.
You agree, Andy?
Sparty.
Smarty.
It's just a one-word answer from you. Wow, Andy, that is the shortest you have ever gone.
I'm trying
on
to
the
keep
Big
it
Ten
moving.
Network.
I know Pavlos wants us to keep it moving.
All right. Well, we appreciate that. All right, Wisconsin taking on 4th-seeded UCLA. This is a matchup I'm really interested in. That was a barn burner in the regular season with the Bruins pulling off the upset out on the West Coast. Does history repeat itself, or did the Badgers get one back?
That's a great game. Wisconsin shot 15 for 30 from 3 and still
brutal.
lost. Now, look, we talked about Adai Mara. He had 22 points in 21 minutes. If he plays 20 minutes, I see UCLA winning this game.
What do you got, Andy?
Yeah, I'm staying my theme here about UCLA, like the women getting to the final. I don't know if I'm going to go that far yet, but UCLA, I do think advancing to Saturday, playing some of their best basketball at the right time. I do think, I just think that when they're on, they're a better team than Wisconsin, certainly defensively. And so I got the Bruins facing Michigan State in a semi.
That's interesting. I don't know how you guys don't pick the Badgers based on the sole fact that they have John Tonje on their team, who's been a 3-level scorer, an absolute bucket. I think he puts this Bruins defense to the test, and I've got Wisconsin moving on. So, hey, this time I'm going to disagree with both of you guys just to add some parity to our picks. How about Illinois taking on 2nd-seeded Maryland? The Terps, one of the hottest teams in the conference, as we've talked about all show. Do they knock off the Illini?
Well, in their one game this season, Maryland just ran Illinois out of the gym in Champaign. Derek Queen and Julian Reese went for 52 points. Now, Tomislav Ivicic did not play that game. It was Morez Johnson's first game in the starting lineup. So this game is going to be very, very different. I had Illinois winning it last year. Now, I'm going with Maryland in this game. I think that starting 5, just so much balance. I think they'll get this one done.
Andy, who do you got in this one?
I agree. And one thing we talked to Kevin Willard about, how much he was looking forward to getting that double bye, getting more rest. He felt like, this would be an advantageous situation. If they could get it, they got it. And I don't think they're going to squander it. I think Maryland advances.
The Terps, I believe, have the best starting 5 across the board in terms of balanced scoring in the Big Ten. That's going to be a really tough starting 5 to beat because they can score in a variety of ways. Also, the three-point shooting massively improved for Maryland this season is something we have not touched on, shooting about 37% from beyond the arc compared to 27% a season ago. I do think that Kevin Willard deserves a lot of credit for the recruiting and the way that he worked to develop his players with that outside shot. That's made a huge difference, being able to balance out the front court scoring with the outside shot, and that's why I have Maryland winning it all. So I'm just saying, alluding to maybe something that Trent picked as well. But let's move along here in the quarterfinals. Purdue taking on 3rd-seeded Michigan. Who wins that one?
Look, everyone's down on Michigan right now. Have not finished the season well. It would not surprise me if they win this tournament. It really would not. They have the talent to do so. I got Purdue winning this game, though. These teams have played twice. They split, but I look at Braden Smith. In those 2 games, 48 points, 12 rebounds, 17 assists. He has dominated, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the response from Michigan's guards. But right now, today, I see Purdue in front of their home crowd. They got the experience in these types of games winning this one.
What do you got, Andy?
Look, I saw Michigan in person last Wednesday. We saw Michigan State totally handle them on Sunday. Purdue plays really well in this building for the most part. And, as long as they can handle that high-low game of Wolf and Golden, and Michigan, by the way, has committed a lot of turnovers and dug themselves some holes lately because of that. So I'm going with Purdue, home crowd, to get to the semis.
My question is, are the Wolverines pretenders overall? Because they've been ranked throughout the season. They got a couple of big wins early on, but suddenly they've fallen off recently. You pointed out the turnover issue among the leaders in the Big Ten, averaging 14, 15 per game. Like, is this a real team when you talk about the NCAA tournament as well? To throw it back at you, Andy, and we'll get your thoughts as well, Trent.
Well, look, it's going to affect their seeding. And I think they've blown their chance to be a top 4 seed unless they win this tournament. So that's still out there. But yeah, I mean, I think that they were a team that, was sort of put together late, and Dusty did a phenomenal job. But, some of those warts have come out. They've hit this sort of skid at the wrong time. I mean, every Big Ten team for the most part, has had this little blip at some point during the season. Illinois and Michigan State had theirs earlier. It's unfortunate that Michigan is hitting theirs at the worst possible time, because they potentially could lose all their momentum going into the NCAA tournament and be a possible first-round exit. And I will say this, I don't know if Trent agrees with me, if they fall to that 5 line, they could be, not that it matters, but I think that they could be one of those teams that a lot of people pick to get upset in a 12-5 matchup in the first round of the tournament.
Here's what I'd say. I don't feel great about them, assuming they play Purdue in the Big Ten tournament, but I probably feel better about Michigan in the NCAA tournament. It's a unique team. You think about how they started the Big Ten season when teams maybe hadn't seen that look, the 2 7-footers they play together. They do have some ability from the guards that haven't stepped up lately, but I'm really intrigued to see how they do in the NCAA tournament. We'll see if they get some momentum, though, in the Big Ten tournament first.
Let's get back to our bracket. It's Michigan State taking on UCLA in the semifinals based on Trent's picks. Who goes on to the title game?
These teams are similar. I think Mick Cronin's, got some Tom Izzo in them. They really get after you defensively. They have depth. I think this is going to be a fabulous game. I really do. I just think Michigan State, though, they're just a bit better. They got more experience, they have more continuity, and therefore I see them winning this game on this stage. And a guy that doesn't get talked about as much enough is Trey Holloman as a leader for Michigan State. I like him in March.
Another game everyone's going to be looking forward to is Maryland-Purdue. Should that come to fruition in real life, in addition to coming to fruition in Trent's bracket, who moves on to the finals?
Well, Purdue beat them pretty easily way back. I think it was in December, early Big Ten game. Brain Smith dominated. I think it's different. I think Maryland's guards come to play. It's going to be a great game, but I see Maryland winning this one.
So going back to the top of that, by the way, the last time that Michigan State played UCLA in the state of Indiana was during the bubble year. They played a first 4 game at Mackey Arena. UCLA won that, ultimately went to the Final Four. I think the revenge, completely different teams, of course. Michigan State's going to beat UCLA in that scenario in the semi to get to the final, just on the ability that I think they just can score better. Certainly we've seen that of late. And then on the other game, I agree. That game was so long ago in December. I like Maryland because of their post play, which is an Achilles heel right now. I know Trey Kaufman-Renn obviously is an all Big Ten player, potential All-American, but he needs help. And whereas, the combination of Reese and Queen, I think potentially could be too much for him, but get him in foul trouble. I like a potential final of Maryland versus Michigan State.
My take is that the Terps are just more balanced in terms of their scoring, with those 5 starters averaging 12-plus points per game. Outside of Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Renn, I don't think there's enough help around those 3 for the Boilers, and I feel like that could be a difference. All right, we've got the championship game based on Trent's picks being Michigan State taking on Maryland, the number 1 and number 2 seeds, all chalk. Who takes this one?
I got Maryland. We've talked about the starters, all 5 of those guys over 12 points a game, but I think their bench, when you look at Geronimo, Jay Young, Gapare, Harris-Smith, they bring some athleticism and quickness, and I think they're going to give them something in Indianapolis. I like Maryland winning what's going to be a great tournament.
I'm going to agree with you that we're going to get to this point. I had a little bit of zigging and zagging to get here, but I'm going to go with Michigan State winning the Big Ten tournament title game. I think by day 3, because they would have played Friday, Saturday, Sunday with these 2 teams, I think the overall depth, this is the case where I think it would benefit Michigan State. As I said at the beginning, Maryland, I think their team is built better for the structure of the NCAA tournament, the days off, the timeouts, and the breaks that you can get. But in this scenario where it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, some physical games, I mean, they'd have to go past Purdue. I like Michigan State winning on Sunday in this bracket if it happens.
Well, I am all for upsets. I would be thrilled if we saw this in real life because this could be a great matchup. Michigan State, Maryland. The Terps, one of the top 3 scoring offenses in the Big Ten, going up against one of the top scoring defenses in the Big Ten. Great rebounding teams and just really, really well-balanced squads. Maryland is who I would pick as well. And with that, we will wrap up this bracket prediction and selection show we did here on the Big Ten Network. Trent, great stuff. Andy, great to see you out in Indy. Have great calls this weekend. Try to get some sleep, get some coffee. And we look forward to seeing you more here on the Big Ten Network throughout the weekend. March isn't just for basketball. The Big Ten men's ice hockey tournament is off and running, or skating, maybe I should say. 2 upsets in the first round, including 5th-seeded Penn State taking down 4th-seeded Michigan. Then how about a massive upset with 7th-seeded and unranked Notre Dame knocking off 2nd-seeded Minnesota? The Gophers also ranked 3rd in the country. Finally, 3rd-seeded Ohio State gets it done against 6th-seeded Wisconsin with a Game 3 comeback. That one was a nail-biter. And now to talk more about the Big Ten men's ice hockey tournament games, we welcome in Paul Caponigri, our Ohio State Buckeyes expert and ice hockey expert. I'm just saying, we get to talk about the Buckeyes.
Sure.
So you got to be in a good mood. How's it going? Yeah.
Good. How are you doing? Talking pucks?
I know, yeah. Talking pucks, talking hoops. We're talking all things March because we love the month of March.
It's the best.
Let's look back at some of those first-round matchups, starting with Notre Dame knocking off 3rd-ranked Minnesota.
Yeah.
This was one I did not have on the bingo card. The Gophers won a share of the Big Ten regular season title, lead the nation in goals. They've been ranked top 5 all season long.
Yeah.
For context, how big of an upset is this?
It's huge. I mean, I didn't have anywhere close, like you said on the bingo card. You know, it's playoff time, though, and a desperate team. Minnesota has everything in front of them. They're a top 5 team, as Kylan said, and Notre Dame just played they knew how they could win. They had to play stingy defense, get great goaltending, and take advantage of a few mistakes. Minnesota didn't make a ton of mistakes, but when they did, it seemed like Notre Dame capitalized, and that's how upsets are created. And then when they got the lead, they just shut it down. They played great defense. They did not let that high-octane offense of Minnesota kind of run and gun up and down the ice. They played back. They made them dump and forecheck, and the hockey terminology, that's something Minnesota does not want to do in their game. So Notre Dame played a great road game, and then to not just beat them Friday. That's what makes this more of an upset is, okay, you'd think they could beat them once, but to beat them twice in 3 games at Mariucci was really just amazing. And you got to give credit. And Jeff Jackson, a shout out for his 600th career win. He got that on Friday, and then to back it up to win it, just incredible stuff by Notre Dame.
You also made a great point about the Fighting Irish having to play really stingy defense, and you have to shout out junior goaltender Owen Say, 38 saves in that Game 3. They were actually outshot, Notre Dame was, but it was the defense and just that desperation, putting your body on the line, that got it done. All right, we got to move on to another first-round matchup between 15th-ranked Penn State. They sweep 11th-ranked Michigan. Were you surprised by that result?
Maybe the sweep. I was not surprised that they beat Michigan. Penn State is the hottest team in the country right now. They're 12-2-2 in their last 16 games. They're getting great goaltending. They're getting timely scoring. They have some freshmen emerging. J.J. Webush at the hat trick and the ridiculous goal in overtime to win the game on Friday. Charlie Serrato's the other guy. And then you have maybe the best forward in the country, Naden Fink. He's leading the country in scoring. And then they have the Russian goaltender, Arseny Sergeyev, getting it done in net. Like, he's not playing out of his mind, but he's making the key saves at the key times in games, and he's given this team so much confidence. And the sweep is a little surprising at Michigan. And in Michigan, we're going to talk about later as maybe a possible NCAA tournament team. But this was not a surprise that Penn State won this series by any imagination.
Penn State, one of the hottest teams in the country during the second stretch of the season. 13-3-4 since January is ridiculous.
I mean, they did not have, we've said this a couple times. They did not have a conference win when we went to Wrigley Field in January. So for them to be where they are now is you got to give Guy Gadowski and then the players a ton of credit for flipping it. It's hard to gain confidence, but they're riding that momentum right now.
Penn State faces Ohio State in the next round. And speaking of the Buckeyes, they took down Wisconsin in much less convincing fashion. They had to hold them off, especially that Game 3 comeback. They really had to grit it out. What did you make of the Buckeyes' performance in this first round?
You know, I thought it was up and down. I mean, nothing comes easy for the Buckeyes. They don't do one thing exceptionally. They're really solid. They're in a lot of areas. They got great goaltending. I think Logan Turnus has been fantastic. But they had to fight for everything. And Wisconsin it summed up their season, right? They had almost Game 2. They were going to sweep the Buckeyes, miss an empty net, then the Buckeyes score with 1:30 left. Right here, you see that Gunnar Wolf-Fontaine scores that goal to tie the game. Then they get one in overtime to get the game to Game 3, and then they win Game 3. They also weren't playing at their home arena. They had to go play at Nationwide, which is not ideal. Look, you're still in Columbus, but you're not playing on this ice you've been playing on all year. So it's home advantage, but not completely. So they fought through some adversity, and they found a way to get here. So it sets up for an interesting matchup in the semifinal, but I love the Buckeyes fight and a tough loss for Wisconsin. But you got to like the way the Buckeyes are trending just to find a way in the playoffs. That's all that matters.
It's not always pretty, but a win is a win. You don't get anything for style points. Ohio State moving on.
Just get that dub.
Yes, exactly. You get something for style points, though. You got the Big Ten Network swag on, Paul.
I try
so
to
we
do it.
Appreciate
I try to represent.
That. The Big Ten men's ice hockey tournament semifinals can be seen right here on the Big Ten Network this Saturday. First, it's top-seeded Michigan State hosting Notre Dame at 6 Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific. Then it's third-seeded Ohio State taking on Penn State at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. That's all right here on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Also here on the Big Ten Network is Paul Caponigri back to preview those upcoming semifinal matchups, starting with your Buckeyes taking on Penn State. We've talked about the Nittany Lions being one of the hottest teams in the country during this last stretch. What would it take to slow them down?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, Minnesota beat them 2 weeks ago in the last game of the season, but it took everything. It's going to be a grind. I think Penn State has just the momentum going for them. All the elements that we talked about. They're also getting great defense. Simon Mack leading the way. But the Buckeyes, right? They found a way against Wisconsin. They're going to be at home. They're going to be back at Value City Arena where they've been terrific all season long. So that's going to be a bonus. I assume the crowd maybe be a little bit better this weekend.
Yeah.
I think it sets up maybe for an overtime game. I know people don't want to hear that kind of stuff, but Penn State is coming in with uber confidence. It is unbelievable right now. I think they're both NCAA teams. I think Penn State, we're talking about, is like 98% right now. But essentially now you're playing for seeding. A little bit different mentality. I don't think that's going to change anything, but it's going to set up for very interesting. I think it's going to be a very tight game. If I'm leaning one way, maybe Penn State, just because of the momentum they've been riding.
I can't believe you're manifesting overtime, Paul.
I mean,
what
playoff overtime hockey, is there anything better? I'm sorry, I don't think there is.
Bonus hockey is always fun. All right, 7th-seeded Notre Dame taking on the top overall seed Michigan State.
Yes.
The Fighting Irish managed to pull off the upset, but it is also exhausting when you're defending throughout a game and having to throw your body on the line, blocking shots, as we talked about they had to do in their opening round matchup. Can they do it again, realistically?
Man, I don't know. And I think they're just playing a different bird here in terms of Michigan. It's the matchup, right? Minnesota want to go up and down the ice, play fast pace. Michigan State can do that, but they can also grind you out, which is what Notre Dame wants to turn the game into. Michigan State beat them 4 times this year. They just beat them 2 weeks ago in their last games of the season at Notre Dame. I just think it sets up. The only thing I think is Notre Dame's got to get off to a good start, and they got to take advantage of maybe a little rust from Michigan State. Those are their kind of recipes for maybe pulling off another upset. I just don't know. It had to become really draining to go through what they did at Minnesota. It's just going to be a tough battle. I like Michigan State to come through. They can beat you in different ways. They're not a one-trick pony, and I think that sets up well for Michigan State.
The Spartans also have the advantage or maybe disadvantage, depending on how you want to look at it, in terms of having a little bit more rest after not playing in that first round.
We'll see how that plays out.
Exactly. That's also a big factor. And they're also gearing up for an NCAA tournament run, which is right around the corner. 16 teams make the tournament based on the pairwise rankings. As we take a look at where the Big Ten schools are at right now, we've got 5 that are in the top 15, maybe some question marks about whether Michigan will move on after getting knocked out of the first round of the Big Ten tournament. But let's start at the top with Michigan State. Are they a lock for a number 1 seed? Does it matter how they do here in the Big Ten tournament?
No, they're a lock. They're going to go to Toledo, which is not too far away. That's going to be the region. I'd be shocked if they don't. Minnesota is teetering on a 1 seed right now, which leaves things very interesting, as you saw there. I think they still go to Fargo as a 1, maybe as a 2, but I don't think that really matters as long as they're there. Then we start trickling down, right, Kyle? And it gets to Ohio State, Penn State. I think they're just for seeding. Ohio State maybe a 2 or 3 seed. And then Penn State maybe a 3 or 4, probably a 3 seed. And then the Michigan one, that's the tricky one.
That's my question, is Michigan have a shot? Now, the 6 conference tournament champions earn spots automatically, so there are only 10 at-large bids.
Yes. They've got a great path. They've played well all season. They just need things to go chalk in the playoffs, and it starts this weekend.
There you have it. Everything you need to know about Big Ten hockey. We are so excited. The semifinals coming up this weekend. Thanks for joining us on Big Ten Today, and we will see you next time.